Hello everyone and welcome back to the state of the world, or the state of my world, my new YouTube channel. I want to start today on a personal note, to talk about the diet I'm on, and I have to say it's working out pretty well. So just under 4 weeks ago, my wife and I started out on the keto diet, which is something she had seen on television, and I think it might be the trend of the day or the trend of the year on the celebrity diets or something. But we've given it a go and have to say it's really working. So under 4 weeks on the keto plan, a whole 17 pounds off as of this morning. So it's having a good effect. And the gist of it is it's a low carb diet, so we've had to cut out some of our favorite foods, but not all. But we've had to cut out the bread, the pasta, the rice, the potatoes, and the fruits. And our diet now consists of meat, cheese, eggs, some nuts, and some veggies. You have to be a bit careful with the vegetables. Some can be a bit high in carbs, and really kind of keep it to, I think it's about 20 grams of carbs a day. But starting to feel good. Check it out if you're looking or thinking about a diet plan, or the 17 pounds I have to say is pretty impressive. I'm a bit of a bigger guy, and been on and off of diets over the years. I don't think I've ever lost 17 pounds and felt so good in a well, ever probably. But and the great news is you can have a drink on this diet. So yeah, I like a drink every now and then, and this plan allows, it doesn't allow for beer unfortunately, but it does allow for a rum and diet coke every now and then. So just check it out, and have a look on YouTube. It's really very good. So that's what I've got to say about that. So moving on. So I want to talk about the BBC license fee today. And the reason I want to talk about it is last week our minds and were on the veterans and the end of the war, and the anniversary of that. And there was some good commentary on, we can't ever forget the sacrifice that the soldiers made, and we have to learn from the mistakes of the past, and all of those things there, and we rightfully held up the surviving heroes, and remembered what they did. Well, this week in the UK at least, the story now for these individuals is that we're going to take away their free TV licenses for the over 75s, and it's caused a bit of a storm, and rightly so. So in the UK, just for those who don't know, we have a system of funding where every household is expected to contribute. The current price is £154.50 a year to maintain and finance the BBC, the British Broadcast Corporation, and it's a pretty big entity. The BBC's, and I researched it, apparently it's made up of 11 TV channels, 19 radio stations, 50 local TV and radio services, the BBC website, on demand, TV and radio, and the BBC iPlayer. So this is a huge media company. It's the biggest media company in Britain by a long way, and with that, the BBC is the dominant broadcaster. It's the dominant news provider. But it's not. My feeling is, the world has changed. The world's moving on, I've got my own opinions about the BBC. We might touch on some of those in a minute, but it's the funding of the BBC. So we've historically had this. There has been protests along the way, but some people just can't afford to pay for the license fee. Some people just don't want to pay for it out of protest. I'm one of those people, actually. I do pay for it, but I really resent having to pay for a service that I just don't really use. I could live perfectly well without. But if you want to watch TV live to air broadcast, you have to, by law, have to pay for this license fee. If you don't pay the license fee, you'll end up in court. You'll get perhaps £1,000 fine, and if you don't pay that fine, you can end up in prison. And it happens all the time. There's lots of people who have gone to prison over this. People in prison right now, presumably, and all for not paying the TV license. I mean, we live in an age of the internet and of it's just astounding that the UK, we just haven't moved on from this antiquated system of kind of taxing each household to put on a public service broadcast channel. And you can see on screen this is how they spend the money, and it's not really this is just the breakdown of the high level buckets of where the money goes, and the money goes a lot of other places other than that. The common critique is the BBC generates all this revenue, and so often it's nothing on, or nothing on that most people would want to watch. Anyway, so the point is that they have this charter. I'll just move over to here. So they have this. They're supposed to take this money and provide impartial news. They're supposed to help support learning for people of all ages, and they've traditionally done that with the by broadcasting the Open University and educational programs to create the highest quality and distinctive output of creative television, reflect and represent the diverse communities of the UK and the regions, and I think there's at least an effort to do that, and to reflect the UK, its cultures and values to the world. Well, I have to say, people are just turning off. This idea that the channel needs to have this public service element as broad as it does. I think people just think the idea of this is just rooted in the past. I'll say again, 11 TV channels, 19 radio stations, etc., etc. You just don't need that much infrastructure and that many channels and to service this idea of having a national broadcaster. Anyway, the idea that the idea that last week we were lauding the heroes of World War II and our pensioners, and a week later we're saying, look, okay, we've forgotten already. You're not due your TV license. It's just another nail in the coffin, I feel, of the license fee. I think it's a very disrespectful move, and I'm not quite sure if it's the BBC or the UK government that's behind this, because as I understand it, I don't think the BBC actually provided free license fees as such. I think the government would subsidise. I don't think they ever just kind of said, hey, you don't need to pay for your license anymore. I think what the point was, I think the expectation was that payment was still there, but it was coming from the government. So it might be unfairly tarring the BBC here with that one. But either way, I just think it's dreadful that anyone should feel in 2019 that anyone should have the compulsion to have to pay a license to watch television. I'm one of those people. I very rarely watch the BBC. I don't like the BBC particularly much. I don't watch its news content. I rarely watch the sport. Occasionally catch a politics program here and there. Generally, I don't appreciate their editorial line. I think there's many commentators within the news organisation that their biases are exposed or on display. There's actually a few that aren't, and I actually think are pretty decent journalists, but that's kind of by the by here. But I just think we're at this point now where £154 by force, by penalty of court fees. It's just not the modern world. We've got to move away from the license fee. I think, point of principle, I really resent having to pay £155 a year for a service that I don't use. I can live without. It's by force of law. It's antiquated. We need to move on. So if we look at it this way, if I jump over to Wikipedia, the total income from license fees was 3.83 billion. Wow. Some of that, obviously, there you go. It's just, some of that was provided. 655 million was provided from the government through the concessions for the over 75. So it's got to be made up somewhere. But should we really still be forced to pay, combined a sum of 3.83 billion? Well, let me tell you something else. People are turning away from the BBC. If you want to watch live transmitted television, you have to pay the fee. If you don't, the options are now, everyone knows them. You've got Netflix, you've got Amazon. There is a way, apparently, I see this a little bit from time to time. If you don't want to pay the license fee, people in the UK know this, so sorry if this is, repeating what you already know. But if you don't want to pay license fee, you have to come away you have to get out of watching live broadcast television, but you can watch stream services. And I think, you know, you pretty much have to kind of limit yourself to the laptop, and you know, and still expect the inspectors to come out. Because yes, if you don't know, people around the world might not know this, but if you don't pay your TV license, you might get a knock on the door. And they apparently have sensor equipment, and they literally stand outside your house and scan your house looking for a television. And if you've got one, they knock on the door, and that's how these people end up going to court. Anyway, so you know, but so people are moving away from that, and this is the crucial point. So, or one of the crucial points. So £152 a year for the BBC, whereas Netflix, my subscription, I believe it's £96 a year. Amazon you can get for £79 a year. And I also currently, and this might change in the future, I also have the satellite TV package. I can't not pay the license fee even if I only watch the satellite package, Sky TV in UK. It's live to broadcast TV, so I can't just sort of not watch the traditional channels or the terrestrial channels and just stick Sky. So even if I didn't watch BBC, even if I didn't watch the old analog channels, even by having Sky, I have to pay that license fee, and that's on top of my Sky bill's pretty high because it's my broadband and TV provider, but it's a little bit over £100 a month. Well, you know, I shouldn't have to pay for the license fee just because when I don't use it, I just point of principle really. I don't go along in 2019 with this idea that we will have to chip in so that, you know, there can be programs made on, I don't know, London architecture or particular arts programs, whatever, which have no public interest. Now, I don't want to say I don't want those programs to be made. I'm saying the people that want to see those programs should pay for those programs. You know, that should be a subscription on its own. People will pay for it if they want to see it. And yeah, there might be lesser interest things, and I'm sure if we ever really truly got to the point where we could actually have a public debate about a proper one about ending the license fee, not only would it be universally popular throughout the country, perhaps not so much in London and some other areas, but if we could really move away from it, it'd have to confront this idea that other people should be paying for your TV. You know, if you that's the way it's going. I mean, you see in America, you know, literally people moving online and to network subscriptions, and that's the way it's got to go. And if the BBC isn't keep up, it's going to go the way of companies like Kodak. You know, you've got to keep up with the market, and people are. I'll come to it in a minute. People are moving away more and more. Tweet I saw earlier, more people ditching the TV license. More than 860,000 TV licenses were cancelled in 2017-18 compared to the 798,000 in 2016-17. So put in perspective, I don't have the official figure. I think there's about 20-ish million houses in the UK, households. It's somewhere in that region, maybe a few more than that now. You know, so you're losing a significant chunk of your revenue every year. So no wonder that they're tapping up the over 75s. But BBC people, come on, read between the lines. Look at the real causes. The system is outdated. You need to move away from a license fee. Whenever this has sort of come up, it's one of those things where if someone says it's almost instantly dismissed, and people say, well, the BBC is like some great institution that's making wonderful TV. I personally don't believe in that, and I don't think most people don't really believe in that. But it's one of those things where there's like a stock answer, and I think that answer's getting thinner and thinner. When the reality is, brilliant with the companies within Britain haven't been making cutting edge, brilliant TV for years. There's a few exceptions. There's a few programs come up, but the things I like, other people won't like. But if you look at America and some other places, the quality of the TV coming out from HBO and Showtime and to a point Netflix is just so much further and so much better than comes out from the UK. Now every now and then a program will get made in the UK or by a UK channel, because actually a lot of American TV is made here as well now. But every now and then they'll hit the mark. They'll make something great. BAFTAs all around, lovey-dovey, all the rest of it, and that will be what they point to. But what they don't point to is the probably 800 or 1,000, whatever it is. I don't know what number it is, but they point to all these other. They won't point to all these other programs that have complete flops and no one cares for. But the business is just churning it out. And with this license, there's no compulsion for them to do anything different or be any better. It's not even something we really talk about. The quality of the BBC output isn't really something we talk about, and I'd really like to see a bit more of that, because I think all signs are pointing towards a change is needed. It really is. I just want to share some other tweets. So this one's from Ban the BBC. So they've got a petition going on saying, Parliament ignored the last petition, which wouldn't surprise me. I don't know if that's true, but it wouldn't surprise me. And again, there you go. It's a much loved and world-renowned, respected institution. Don't wait for politicians to do something. The people need to finish the BBC off. Cancel your licence today. Hashtag defund the BBC. So, there you go. I mean, one person on Twitter maybe, but look at the next tweet. So Wayne Hunt says, why keep paying for a service you're not happy with? You have no choice. That's why. That's absolutely right, Wayne. And then I wanted to move on. So another point, I talked about the editorial things. Just one of many things comes up every now and then. Yesterday there was a launch, I believe it was for Boris Johnson. There's many people running to be the next leader of the Conservative Party. It matters in the UK because Theresa May is effectively resigning or has resigned. And the winner of this contest is our next Prime Minister. They will be the person leading the Conservative Party in Parliament. Well, the chief political reporter for the BBC is a lady called Laura Kunzberg. I think that's how you pronounce it. Apologies for not. There's always, for a long time, there's been this kind of tradition in the UK with all the people who are a little bit right-leaning say that the BBC has got this left-wing bias, and all the people on the left say, look, the BBC has this right-wing bias, and the BBC would claim, well, they're impartial and down the middle, but I really don't believe that on the whole that there's such a thing as impartiality in news media anymore. Anyway, so this was just an interesting tweet I picked up on earlier. So again, it comes back to this left-right battle. Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson says she's made a formal complaint to the BBC this morning. Laura Kunzberg's report was edited, and I'm not, I don't know if it's a suggestion it was Laura or the editors, but it was edited to make it look like Boris Johnson was being jeered, when in fact another reporter's question was being jeered, and she's going to let everyone know how you get on. So this is just this continual battle, and what does it matter? I mean, media neutrality is an interesting topic everywhere around the world, but I don't know how many countries it's absolutely mandated by law, and it's in the BBC charter. They're supposed to be impartial, and the debate rumbles on yet again. The right say it's left leaning, and the left say it's right leaning. Get rid of it. Let the BBC become a subscription funded channel, at least for the most part. All the strip out of the BBC Two, the BBC Three, all the radio channels, and all the rest of it, and let it have its let it have its bias. Let them be how they want to be, and let's not pretend they're impartial. Then so another, and I'll just touch on this quickly. So another controversy is rumbling in the UK. There's a left-wing comedian who's known fairly well around the country. Her name's Joe Brand, and really the only reason I really come to this, yesterday's video touched on free speech, and just think it's interesting because this is kind of in the same arena. So I'll just go to the page. So Joe Brand had made a comment on a satire program on Radio 4, which is obviously one of the 19 radio stations they're running. And on Radio 4, she said, let's do the quote so I'm not misquoting her. She basically said that, let's just find it, in respect to people throwing milkshakes at politicians, she said, why bother with milkshakes when you could get some battery acid? Which is a pretty appalling thing to say. Now, she's a comic, and she there's you can't just jump down everyone's throat, I know, but then she said that's just me, I'm not going to do it. She said it's purely a fancy, but I think milkshakes are pathetic, I honestly do, sorry. Well, I think the controversy here is really, the milkshaking is a very real thing. It's not very nice. I just don't think you should be throwing things on people, no matter how much you dislike them or disapprove of what they've got to say. And we've got politicians in public life where that's actually happening. And what worries me about this is, and this is, I can't really call into question. I can't. No one can know what was in Joe Brown's mind, but you kind of question, was this actually a dog whistle to someone to say, okay, yeah, go do it. And she said she's not going to do it, and that's just her, and it's a pure fantasy. Well, I just think it's very dangerous. It really disappoints me that we can't just have public discourse without the nastiness, and when this is something that's actually happening. And of course, if someone actually now goes out and does that to someone, people are going to point back to Joe Brand, and Joe Brand's going to write and say, well, hey, I'm not responsible for the behaviour of other people. I just feel like, in a civilised society, we should be able to steer clear of those lines. I mean, I have no problem with testing the boundaries of free speech, though, as I said yesterday, those boundaries seem to get narrower and narrower, and the sphere within what's acceptable seems to be getting smaller and smaller, and that's a real shame. But we can't know what was in Joe Brand's mind. I think comedians will test those boundaries, and always, and there is perhaps a role there, but it's you get these sinister ideas that is she really kind of, sort of, like I said, is a dog whistle, and if that happens, I mean, it's just to be a crying shame. We just gotta get this stuff out of our conversation and our discourse. I just think this doesn't help at all. And if I just kind of share the tweet afterwards. So at the end of the show, Nigel Farage had heard about it, and he's right. I mean, it's technically, I think it is an incitement to violence, and not protected by free speech. I mean, it is an incitement in that sense. But again, they're saying they're surprised. I mean, how can you be surprised? I mean, if you can't put yourself in the shoes of someone that's forced to hire security to have his say in public and live public life. We all know the stories. His family have been harassed in public, and the people get a bit close that they don't like the guy or what he's got to say, and it's to literally take a conversation around that and incite the battery acid is not nice. It's also should also be said, some people might not be aware of this, and it's one of those things that kind of fades from. We have a problem in this country with acid attacks anyway. I mean, a few weeks ago I went to the hardware store, and we had a bit of a situation, but they no longer sell One Shot, the stuff that cleans through your toilet, because it's people buying it and using it in assaults. And I'm sure I haven't prepared this, but if you jump over to Google and go look at the go do a Google search, acid attacks in the UK. There's been a lot of them. It's damaged people's lives. I've seen people on television talking about the effects where ex-partners or family members have attacked people with acid. I mean, you can't undo that. I mean, it burns the skin. It must be terrifically horrible. So to kind of bring that kind of, it's not like that's not known about in the UK. To sort of bring that and call that humour, I just think that's an incredibly bad taste. And though I think, strictly speaking, Nigel's right. I mean, it is an incitement to violence. I mean, again, the barriers of free speech, I think she's crossed them there, but a comedian and all the rest of it. But let me just park that. Let me just say that so that's my opinion. However, in the UK, again, so Joe Brand, BBC, Radio 4, presumably a fairly middle class audience, perhaps left leaning, Victoria Coe and Joe Brand, you know what you're getting there. And I think this storm will pass. I think nothing will happen. I don't think this will go to the police. I think it will move on, and some marks on the uniform for Joe, for on the left wing side. Hey, well done. Another controversy, got one over. Got to say something about Mr. Farage. But again, so how is that any different than to the Count Duckula case? So the guy goes on YouTube. So it's not BBC. He goes on YouTube. And then he says some things, he makes a video about his dog, and the police turn up on his doorstep, and then he goes to court, and then he's fined for invoking in a comedic manner, as I understand it, Nazi salutes and invoking kind of Nazi speech in a comedic sense. Perhaps poor taste as well, undoubtedly. But how is it that Count Dunkula is police fines, police on the doorstep, and relatively unknown civilian on YouTube, yet BBC well known lefty lovey says something about Nigel Farage, and to this point nothing's happened officially, I should say. I think there are. It's clear there's no set standard here with free speech in the UK. Some people perfectly entitled to go and argue the differences between the situations. There's other situations out there of potential free speech infringement and potential kind of where you've kind of crossed the line. But here's what I would say: what are the rules? I mean, that's what I want to know. I mean, what are the rules? I mean, we haven't got it written down in law sufficiently for people to understand. It seems it's all right for some people to do some things on the BBC and not others. Recently, there was another case of another comedian, or I believe he's ranked as a comedian, Danny Baker, posted a picture on the internet of it was a satirical picture saying the new royal baby comes from hospital and in place it was a chimpanzee. He claims he didn't realise the racial connotations of it. I'm not going to judge him on that in this conversation, but the point being that it was almost instantaneous. He apologised for the gaffe, in poor taste and all the rest of it, or was my understanding. Hard line from the BBC. No, Danny Baker, we don't accept your apology. You've crossed the line. What's the difference between Danny Baker and Joe Rand? Again, we're getting into semantics, but I think we'd all just like to understand the rules. We might not agree on them, but why is it one standard for one and one for another? If we can get that into the public discourse, if we can all understand it a little bit better, if YouTube can be clear on their rules, see the Stephen Crowder situation, if BBC can be clear about their rules, maybe we could just get past these kind of tedious stories and we can all just kind of have our conversations with one another and just get on with life. And actually maybe we could fix some things and move some things on in society rather than just kind of railing off on each other. Anyway, guys, so thank you very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please tickle the like button and consider giving me a subscribe. Be very much appreciated. That, as you probably all know, is YouTube currency. Have a great day. Take care. Thank you.